warm welcome to our listeners. This is SciLang Global Podcast, where polyglots from around the world help us unravel the relationship between languages, science, and ourselves. My name is Agnieszka, and today I have the pleasure of hosting our guest, Sarah Spicer, a Neurolanguage English Coach and the founder of the English Coach. Sarah has been teaching English since 2006. So, hello, Sarah. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hi, Agnieszka. Thank you very much for having me.
Before we go into your work, which is very, very interesting to me, I just wanted to ask you what I usually ask our guests, which is whether you can tell me what languages you speak and what made you choose those languages.
Yeah, so there's probably two main languages that I have a good knowledge of and have spoken a lot, and those are French and Thai.
Mm-hmm.
But my journey to learning both of them is quite different. So if we think about French, I learned that at school. So it was compulsory.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm from the UK. When I was at school in the UK, it was compulsory to do a foreign language at GCSE level.
Mm-hmm.
So French was the language. So I had a really good knowledge of it. On paper, I was quite good at French. You know, I could do all the tests. I think I came out with an A at the end, which sounds quite good.
Mm-hmm.
But actually using the language, going to France and speaking, it wasn't accessible, the language. You know, I had a good knowledge of grammar and everything, but actually using it was different.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I was never a language person. I didn't think it came naturally to me, which is maybe quite interesting.
It's very
Where
interesting.
I come from for the job that I do, because I actually went to university to study psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a background in languages at university, which may be quite different for most language teachers as well. But I was always fascinated about people from different countries learning about different cultures. And really, my plan originally was to specialize in an area of psychology, educational psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring those two things together, I thought, well, let's teach English abroad. So it's something that lots of British people do, is spend some time abroad teaching English as a foreign language, second language.
Mm-hmm.
And an opportunity came up to go to Thailand and to work there doing some summer school activities for about 3 months. So this is where my second language comes in, and that is Thai. But I came at it from a completely different angle. I hadn't studied it at all. It was my motivation for learning was to communicate with people, you know, to meet people, make friends, learn more about the culture. Even though I was teaching English, I had to speak Thai with my colleagues. And that was a lot more effective. And suddenly I felt, oh, actually, maybe I'm quite good at languages. Maybe I can do this after all. So it's an interesting journey. And I see it in some of my clients who are learning English. Most, to be honest, have studied English at school and have, know the grammar, know lots of words, but they need support using the language and speaking and activating what they know, basically. So I'm sort of bringing both of those experiences when I'm doing my coaching and teaching.
It's interesting that you said that you had like these two completely different routes when learning another language. And it's also interesting that on paper, you were really good in French and then you couldn't really communicate. And with Thai, it's the other way around.
Yes.
So you, as a language coach, can you tell me more about your role as bridging this gap between these two?
Yeah. So I've only been a language coach, I would say, the past 3 years, but I think my approach has always had elements of coaching. So I started off teaching in Thailand It was literally about teaching the language, the function of the language, and then getting people to feel a bit more confident speaking. But there wasn't that need to speak. I was also in Japan for a while, and that was a different thing as well. That, again, they had a good knowledge of the grammar, but I was there to help them build their confidence speaking. So if they had placements abroad, they felt more confident. So it's all the common theme really is helping people to feel more confident. So as a coach, this is where I first identified as a coach, because it was less about teaching the sort of the structure, the function of the language, but how to build their confidence. That's where I was coming from.
So can we actually come back to basics? Can you tell me more about the difference between a teacher, a language coach, and also a neuro language coach?
Yeah, good question. And I think there are some grey areas as well. Teacher, when we think of teacher, it's more about imparting knowledge. Right. So when people are starting to learn the language, they need to learn the grammar rules, they need to learn new vocabulary. And the teacher is more of you're imparting the knowledge onto that other person. Coaching is a word that lots of English teachers and language teachers everywhere have started using in maybe their marketing, because it sounds good, right? And I think in other areas of life as well, business coaching, it's become a bit of a buzzword. But really at the core of it, coaching is you're more of a guide, and you're helping people to find their own way, and to find their own way of learning. So whereas teaching, you might follow certain practices, you have a different way of teaching. Coaching, you're helping that individual to find a way that works for them. So, and also setting goals, helping people with their motivation. You're there as accountability, so you're helping people to progress and see the progress that they've made. So a lot of the coaching side is about motivation, confidence. Now the Neurolanguage coach, so I qualified as a Neurolanguage coach around 2 years ago now. And this is bringing those concepts from coaching, but also bring it together with the knowledge of neuroscience. And really recognizing that no two brains are the same. We all learn in different ways, and it's important to understand that. But also blocks that are stopping you. So I think emotion and fight and flight response is a big part that can hold people back. It can give people mind blanks. If you're in a conversation and you're feeling very nervous or you feel a lot of pressure in that situation, often your mind might go blank. Okay. And it's all about calming the mind. And when I'm working with clients, it's creating a calm space where they feel confident to sort of flow with the language and less focused on making mistakes. And not only that, recognizing that the brain has this plasticity, so it is able to change and we can mold it. And it's important, I think, for people who just believe they're not, for example, how I was, they believe I'm just no good at languages, I'm never going to learn, or I'm too old. There's all these beliefs that can stop people from making the progress. Whereas when you've got this sort of neuroscience that says actually it is possible, it's just finding the way that works for you, that's quite empowering for people, and to understand shifting that mindset may be all you need to really make a lot of progress. So that's what I found doing the neurolanguage coaching. Suddenly, when I found what it was that was holding people back, they suddenly made a lot of progress, which was obviously, for me as a coach, is really rewarding as well. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. When you said about calming the mind and the beliefs that really hold us back, I suddenly started to feel so much calmer.
Okay.
Because I absolutely agree with that, and I believe that if someone wants to learn a language, there is always a way. I think I wanted to ask you about actually teaching English, because you said that you taught English in different countries.
Yeah.
So and now you're in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So is there a difference between teaching English as an expat and here in the UK? Do people have similar attitudes towards learning English? Do you have similar attitude towards teaching English? Does this differ or not? I'm curious about that.
Yes, it's about motivation.
Mm-hmm.
When my first job was actually teaching children in a school, and if they can't see directly how this is going to help them, and it's the same with me learning French,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's hard to motivate them just by seeing what the goal is at the end. So there's a different approach. It's trying to make the lessons fun and engaging in themselves. So they're learning. It's finding fun ways to make them, but develop that motivation to learn, I would say. So it can be tricky. And there as well, a lot of it was about finding what interests them. I always remember one of my last jobs in Thailand, I was working in a language school. So many of the students were in school, maybe bilingual schools or Thai instruction schools, and then they came for extra English classes. And there was a brother and sister. The brother was 16, the sister was 12. And the parents, they just wanted them to be taught together. I just really want them. It was like, it's just easier for everyone if they're taught together. So I tried my best. The girl's 12, she loved it. And the school was actually aimed at the younger children, I would say. But then the teenager was just not interested at all until we started speaking about music. And suddenly something lit up in his eyes and he wanted to communicate. So rather than going through the motions of just saying what you're meant to say and trying to say things correctly, suddenly he was really interested. And the next week he came back all excited, and he'd done some research and was telling me all about these bands that he likes. And I was like, wow, I've done it. Found something that he's interested in and making him want to use the language. I've gone off on a tangent here, but it's a bit more tricky to find that spark and that motivation when you're not in an English-speaking country. And usually with older students and adults, it's more about, I have to do this to get a good job. That's a mentality as well. So it's not that they want to. So still, at the same time, finding things that they enjoy is an important step to help them enjoy the language as well. So it's not such this is what I have to do, and I'm annoyed that I have to do it. No.
So you think you have to kind of have a specific mindset to learn?
Yeah, I think it makes it easier. Rather than if you feel like this is something that I have to do for my job, maybe you become resentful of it, you have negative associations. I might go off a tangent a little bit again here, but when I did my master's, we were talking about, I was finding out learners' stories. So Thai people who'd reached a really high level of English. And rather than just asking what motivated them, I asked them to tell me their story. How did they first get interested in learning English and get to where they got to? And the thing they all had in common was probably early on in life, they had a positive experience. So whether it was a teacher that they really liked and that helped started it, or they had an interest in Western culture or British culture, American culture, the music. There was always something else that sort of took them along and motivated them to get better. One guy was telling me when he was younger, he lived next door to an international school. And so there was lots of Western kids from all different countries all speaking English. And he'd be in the park playing football. So he had that motivation to communicate with them. Whereas at school, he hated English. So it's somehow recreating that spark of motivation and interest that helps people to learn. And yeah, I suppose that shifts your mindset into, I want to learn more rather than I have to learn more.
So do you think there's like any additional benefits from learning and speaking other languages other than its face value? So understanding the communication, is there more?
Yes, I think it helps you to see the world in different ways and from different points of view. Whether that, well, I think it's the language as well, because there's some, maybe you have words in English that you don't have in Thai and vice versa. So the way you sort of conceptualize the world and understand the world, it helps to broaden your mind that way. It's good for the brain, neuroscience, you're more flexible. So it's got long-term benefits as well. But because language is so tied to culture, for me personally, I think learning languages and living abroad totally opened my mind to so many things. And maybe I thought I was quite open-minded, but having those experiences made me more open to different things and understanding other people's experiences.
And I think I would like to ask you a little bit more about English specifically. So this is something that I ask, I think, almost all our interviewees, because this is something that I'm really interested in, like learning from others what they think, is that to communicate our work and to collaborate with people. And for example, doing this interview right now, we are kind of bound to use English. And I'm curious whether you see that as a restriction, or on the contrary, this is something that brings us together. It's liberating in a way. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you can't deny it's a positive thing. Absolutely. The fact that we can communicate with people in different countries, we have this language that many people in the world can speak, and it's the lingua franca in many cases. At the same time, there is this emphasis on English, and I'm an English teacher, it's a big business, English teaching, and this idea that if you go to an English-speaking university, somehow this is more prestigious. Whereas I think you can miss things as well. Again, coming back to the concepts, maybe there's a concept in another language that doesn't exist in English, and it could help you to solve a problem in a different way. And if we're just so insistent that everyone's speaking English all the time, maybe we miss these things as well. And I think more attention needs to be placed on research that is done in different languages. So I mean, but when I work with companies in the UK supporting their staff from overseas, and one of the things that I want to say, if you help people to feel more confident to speak up and share their ideas, they've maybe come from a different educational background, different language, they've got a different way of looking at problems. I particularly work with engineers as well. So it could be you're missing out if people are holding back and not speaking and sharing because they're worried about their English. So it's a bit of both, like everything. It's finding that balance, isn't it? That we're not so focused on English all the time. And, we've come so far with English now. It is we can't just say, okay, we're going to have another language for everyone as the lingua franca, but it's a bit of both.
I agree. This is something where, like with everything, balance is the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think people will continue to study languages, or they will depend on the technology more when it comes to communication?
I think the easy way out is to depend on technology. And I think it is useful in lots of situations. Things like ChatGPT, it is useful, particularly for, I think if you use it in the right way, so use it as inspiration rather than doing things for you, it can absolutely help you to develop. But unless there's some kind of AI that speaks for you, and does that exist? You have something in your ear and it just translates what you say. I don't know. But maybe that does exist. But I think we all want a human connection. That's ultimately what language is all about. And as much as we could use these tools, they can get us so far. But having a conversation like this, I don't think it would be the same if we were using AI to communicate, you know?
I agree. I like to think about it as something that will help us, but not necessarily just, I hope that people will not stop learning languages. Also because it's just a fun activity.
Yeah, exactly. And the things that it allows you to do. I think AI, there's lots of new AI English courses out there, which are great to build your knowledge, but you need to get out there and use it. That's what it's all about, communicating and building confidence, which is what I'm always focused on. You need to be out there using it, doing it to make the progress. So a balance again.
Another question that I wanted to ask is about the fact that many people in English-speaking countries, if they have attempted learning a language, many of them, they do not succeed. And what do you think is the main reason for that and how it could be overcome?
I think it's simply because English is so widespread and spoken everywhere. So it's coming back to that motivation. There's not the motivation there to learn. But to, I think, native speakers' detriment, really, because, as I mentioned before, there are other benefits to knowing other languages and seeing the world in a different way and keeping your brain young as well and flexible. And when we're becoming, how do I overcome it? Probably what I would say to my own students as well is finding things that interest you and setting yourself goals, but having a purpose at the end of it. So relate it. What do you want to do in your life? How is this going to help you? I mean, it's a very few people who just like, oh, I love learning languages. I'm so interested in languages. And some people are like that. Like they're fascinated by all the differences and how different things are expressed in different languages. But I would say the majority of people just want to live their lives. So if that can help them in some way and they find what that thing is that motivates them, that's what it is. So whether it's to work abroad, travel abroad, for love, that's quite a big motivator for many people. Develop languages, you know. I think that's the key, finding that motivation. But I do worry, you know, when I was at school, at least it was compulsory to learn a foreign language. Now it's not. Schools in the UK now, it's not compulsory. And you can see why people wouldn't choose it, because if it doesn't seem directly relatable to their life. so how French was for me, I didn't have a plan to live in France or move to France. I didn't know French people. It didn't seem directly relevant, but I'm so glad I learned it because I used it later on in life, and it also helped me to understand how to learn other languages as well and become a better teacher. So does that make sense?
And are there any actually popular approaches? So, for example, like we talked in school without this motivation. Are there other approaches to language learning which you disagree with?
Yeah, there's two extremes that I disagree with. So I'm always in the middle somewhere. So there's ones that focus on like grammar translation. That was always a sort of traditional way of learning. So translating grammar from one language into another. But actually that works for some people, and I have shifted a little bit on that because I think noticing the differences between your first language and English, when you notice the difference, you can correct that mistake. So actually that's useful to a point, but again, it doesn't solve the problem of actually speaking it and using the language. You can understand it, but we're not using it. And then it became more fashionable, the communicative approach, where it's all about communication. You just have to make yourself understood. And this is really good to build people's confidence and stop where, you don't have to worry about mistakes, and that's fine. But really, we need to be somewhere in the middle, because if you're too focused just on communication, maybe you do make mistakes. People get what you mean. Actually, you could be clearer. So I'm always finding this balance between making sure people don't lose confidence by pointing out mistakes, but at the same time, helping them to improve their accuracy, but without being so focused on them.
I think it's a lovely way of finishing our conversation. This reminder that we always need to find balance, also in the language learning, and finding motivation, and remembering that language is about human connection. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Thank you.
This was SciLang Global Podcast. Till the next time.